Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another video in Crusader Kings 2. Today, I will be teaching you about government types and the wrong government type negative modifier. Basically, in the Facebook group Crusader Kings 2, a little bit on Reddit, and here and there from my friends, I've been hearing a lot of things about government types and people not quite getting to grips why and how that exists and what are the differences, and especially the opinion penalty is quite confusing for people, and rightfully so. The government thing is something that's confused me for all. I didn't really quite get a good grasp of for years. Basically, I think I played the game for like 2 or 3 years without really knowing the ins and outs of government systems and how they affect everything and how you can influence and all that. So here to save you from years of ignorance, I'm going to teach you about the government systems today, and it is rather simple, so expect this to be a relatively short video, but it's one of those things that the game doesn't really explain all too well, especially if the problem with governments becomes an inner state thing. Basically what this means is if a few of your vassals have a different government type from yours, there is not that much you can do about it, and it becomes a little bit of a problem, and the game doesn't really explain how to fix it. At least not very directly, so no, that's the source of most confusions, I feel like. So, we return to the Hungarian Empire, the one from last episode, the glorious thingamajig spanning from Constantinople to Hispania, and soon to encompass East Francia as well. This is an earlier save that I went back to. I actually have all of East Francia at the time of recording, so on the save file. So let's take a look at the first and obvious question: how many government types are there? The most accurate answer I can give you is it depends. DLCs determine how many of the different government types you can play. So there is the Republics DLC, there is the Viking Tribal DLC, there is the Nomads DLC, so they basically allow you to play as different government types. But in the game right now, let's say there are the following government types regardless of your DLCs. You have the Feudal system, which you do actually have a government map mode for this thing, which is not accurate, by the way. Don't believe it. Well, it's partially accurate, partially not. There is the Feudal / Ector system. It's exactly the same with just one difference, and I'm going to get into that right away. Ector is, as I described in one of the previous videos, is basically Muslim feudalism. The difference is Ector rulers can control mosques directly. That's the only difference. Everything else is more or less the same. You do have a decadence mechanic that you need to worry about. Some of the ins and outs are a little bit different, but overall, in the grand scheme of things, it's pretty much the exact same thing. In terms of inheritance, the Ector Imperial or the Ector Kingdom inheritance is a despotic empire. Your succession laws are a little bit different. But overall, it's a fairly similar thing. Being under Ector, or being a Muslim ruler, or being a Christian feudal ruler, it's the same government type, basically, more or less. Different government types from that are really different are republics. I'm probably going to do a video on republics at a later date in terms of playing them, but essentially all you need to know about republics so far is that it's one type of governance, whereby the controller of the republic, upon his death, does not get inherited by his son. There is an election. Now you can obviously, we'll talk about this in a future video, you can fund your son to get elected, you can fund another dynasty member to get elected, all sorts of things you can play around with. And most importantly, the republics are huge on money. So they can build trade depots and trade posts, and they can have trade wars and stuff like that. They're huge on money. You can become the wealthiest man alive with just one county as a republic. And they also have loads of ships. But for now, again, that's how to play them, that's for a different date. For now, it is basically just that. How do you get rid of a vassal that's a republic? Well, usually the answer is bury him under another vassal, right? So, for example, the Republic of Venice, even though it is Muslim, I believe this is still a republic. Yes, it is. How did I get rid of it? Well, here you go. I buried him under another vassal, under the Kingdom of Italy. And as you can see, he does have the negative modifier towards his liege of wrong government type -20. Officially speaking, the King of Italy can destroy the Republic of Venice. This will anger the current Doge, or the Wali, very, very much. But it could be worthwhile, because at that point the Republic of Venice would cease to exist, and the negative modifier would go away. But it's also worthwhile to keep these. He has a load of money, he has a load of income, he pays a lot of taxes to the king. If the king can keep him happy, despite the -20 modifier, he also provides a large amount of ships, usually to the king, depending on the in-game date as well. So they're worth having if you can keep them happy, but if not, you can destroy them. That's one option. Now, the far more annoying tribal systems. So, tribes are another form of government type. The difference between a tribe and a kingdom, and a feudal kingdom, is feudal kings rule over castles, again, mosques if they're Icta, and their vassals rule over cities and churches if they're not Icta, or you can have a imam rule over a mosque if you don't want to bother controlling it yourself. So, tribes, on the other hand, have... This is going to sound stupid at first, but they have tribes. This is a type of holding, this is also a type of government. Okay? So, for example, we could take a look at Pest. In Pest, we can see that the main county capital is a mosque. We're going to talk about that as well. There is a type of government involving mosques being the center of governance, but we'll leave that for now, okay? So, a tribe is also the center of a tribal government. Makes sense, but it is also a type of holding. This type of holding can be held by regular vassals within a tribal government system. Problem is, the tribes really don't like feudal systems. And as you can see, somewhere in there is wrong government type. Unless this guy is an actual feudal vassal somewhere else, which I don't think he is. But let's take a look at this one, for example. Somewhere in there it should be. Low tribal organization, no. Tyrant. Ah, here we go. So, it goes all the way up. The king here, King Lovro of Croatia and Pannonia and Bohemia, is a tribal ruler now. So he's no longer under the feudal system, he's under a tribal system. How do you fix that? And this works the exact same for dukes and kings under your control as well. So basically, he controls this province, it is his capital, and the main thing in that province is the Pozzoni tribe, and it is a tribal holding. Why is this a bad thing? Well, as you can see, he doesn't like me particularly. Vicious rumors is one thing, religious frail, tribal view on frail also decreases that even lower, and wrong government type. He's tribal, we're Icta. We don't really get along all too well. How do we fix this? Well, one way to fix it is to upgrade this holding with a stone hill fort, and then pray. eventually he will become a vassal of under feudalism, because tribes sort of naturally evolve into feudalism the more wealthy and the more powerful they become. However, in situations like these, where you have a huge king with 3 kingdom titles under you, and he's a tribal ruler, there is precious little you can do. Essentially, what he needs to do is he needs to click here and go turn into a feudal system, and that's about it. But is it really that simple for him? Well, let's take a look. So, we do this with SHA-info-1 and play 1101899. So, we're now playing as the aforementioned king. What will it take for this king to adopt feudalism? Right now, he can just do it. So, as you can see, there are quite a few things that you need to fulfill. Your liege needs to be feudal, or one of your capitals, or one of your holdings. No. One of the following must be true. The capital holding, yes. Your capital holding must be tribal and have a stone hill fort. You must not be the rank of Baron, and you must be the character, this guy, which, rather, you must be yourself, which makes a lot of sense if you think about it. But yeah, there you go. Tribal vassals, on the other hand, cannot build baronies, cannot build castles, cannot build, they can only build tribes and temples. They can't build cities either. That comes with feudalism. They can only build tribes and tribal rural holdings, I suppose, and temples. Temples are controlled by the sort of church, spiritualist appointed dude, in this case an imam, even though it is a tribal church, not a feudal church or an Ector mosque. They are called imams in this case, and baronies are controlled by barons, but they cannot build them, they can only control the ones that were there already that they conquered. So at this point, King Lovro can just go over here and go ahead and say, you know what, I'm going to adopt feudalism and I'm going to become a king. The reason they don't always do this, however, is, well, there's problems with doing that. Because now all his tribal vassals really don't like him. For example, this guy, I think, is of the wrong... It might not be. But yeah, all his tribal vassals under him, his dukes, will dislike him because of the wrong government type. So, whilst it is usually worth doing this, and does provide more benefit than it does negatives, in the long run, you do have to feel for the AI and why it doesn't click that automatically and immediately. Sometimes they just don't want to do it as well. What can you do about that? Nothing. Well, it's not necessarily true. Let's go back to our original character and think about what we can do with... Actually, no, let's do it with this character. So let's say we have a vassal somewhere in here. Let's, for example, we find one that's directly under me. If one such vassal exists. No, they're all dukes. Well, that's interesting. Are you the wrong government type? Possibly, no. Let's imagine we have a duke, for example, him, that's the wrong government type compared to us. What can we do about it? Well, we can revoke his title. In Ector, you can do it without any objections and without any tyrannical penalties. However, the law needs to support it. So, King of Croatia law needs to allow for titles to be revoked. Currently, everyone's going to vote against it, so we can't really do that. But if the law allows it, you can revoke his title and give it to a different vassal. Different how? Different in terms of, let's say, we can give it to this guy. Or more importantly, this guy, because he's the duke. So he's the duke of the half of this sort of area. Why is that important? Well, he's an Ector duke, right? He is a Muslim which secretly practices orthodoxy. And so he's secretly an orthodox. And he is in the Ector system, or the feudal system, depending on how you want to look at it, because officially he's a Sunni Muslim, but unofficially he's not. Things get a little bit complicated, which is why I said they're basically the same system for pragmatics, as far as pragmatically looking at it, as far as pragmatically is, pragmatic questions are concerned. So, you can give him the Duchy of Pest, or anyone else whose primary holding is a barony, and whose capital is a barony, or is a castle, right? You will get control of this. Mind you, if, for example, as this county is concerned, Sand, however you pronounce it, this is controlled by a tribal count. He will have the negative modifier towards his liege, as he does towards his liege right now, because this is actually a duke in the feudal system, but more on that in a bit. And I think it's because... yeah, it's because he's actually a... he is in the feudal system because his primary holding is a mosque and not a tribe. So the modifier will continue, it's just that you won't have to deal with it, your vassal will. And if this guy rebels against your vassal, you don't really care because they still can remain under your control no matter what. So, there you go. TLDR of it, how do you fix the entire thing? Upgrade his tribal holding, let's find one, until it becomes a stone hill fort, and pray to the Lords of RNG that he accepts feudalism. If he doesn't, revoke his title if you really, really have to, but bear in mind that has certain consequences and is not the easiest thing to do always. What about other government types? Are there any? Yes, and we saw one a second ago, but it's not a very good representation of what it is. Essentially, theocracies are also another semi-popular government type in medieval Europe and India. So, let's take a look at a theocracy. And first of all, we're going to need to find one, right? Not the easiest thing to do, especially in a world where Christian feudalism doesn't really exist anymore. I mean, the only Catholic bit of land controlled by Catholics is up here. Let's see if we can find a county under the control of a... theocrats, under the theocracy government, let's just say. No, not really. There has to be one somewhere, one would assume. Alright, give me a second. Okay, I figured we go to 1066, the historical starting point, which is a good starting point because this is what most people will start the game off with, and take a look at the probably most important theocracy in the history of Europe, the Papal State. So, what's the deal with theocracies then? At this time, you cannot play theocracies regardless of DLC. What's the deal with them? Well, Pope being a little bit special because he controls pretty much all of Catholic Christianity, but essentially theocracies are the same as a feudal system except the primary holding is a church. However, if you take a look at Muslim communities in the Ector system, it is possible for a feudal government to have a mosque as a primary holding in a county, and for that to still be a feudal, or for that to still be the Ector system. Again, I keep mixing up the two on purpose because it's practically more or less the same thing. There are some different game mechanics, but in terms of government type, it's more or less the same thing, right? So it is possible, as we saw in the Hungarian Empire, for that to occur. However, the sort of twist with Muslims being, it is also possible to have Muslim theocracies. Iran, for example. But, you know, modern day aside, it is also possible to have these in 1066, or even earlier than that. in the earliest possible start in the game. This can happen, and what's the problem with that? Well, if you get a wrong government type modifier, that becomes a little bit of a problem because they don't like you. So what happens if a theocracy is under the wrong government type? So we have the king of the Pechenegs here, and he's going to vassalize the Pope. How the hell is he going to do that? Well, like so. And there we go. So, I've vassalized the Pope by means of heretical magic. What happens now? Well, take a look at Pope Alexander. He wants a seat on my council. I'm an infidel. He's zealous. All that is fine. It is also a wrong government type. Now, in the current situation, this will be the least of my problems because, well, first of all, I would have to do this to get him to hate me ever so slightly less, and then I will need to convert to Christianity in order for him to hate me even less than this, which I think I will be able to do eventually. But at any rate, if that weren't the issue, the wrong government type still would be. What can you do to fix it? Nothing. The standard, if you can't fix the problem, bury it under another vassal and have him deal with it, applies, but in this case, the Theocracy is a kingdom. You can't bury kingdoms under anything. I mean, eventually, I could perhaps usurp or destroy the papacy. That's not likely to happen anytime soon, though. Actually, the papacy literally cannot be revoked, and it literally cannot be usurped, so if it's a duchy and it's a theocracy, yeah, again, revoke it, give it to someone else, bury it under a bigger vassal, things like that you can do. But in this case, it's literally impossible. So, theocracies are a little bit of a pain in the ass to deal with. There is precious little you can do to stop them. On the bright side of things, it is only a -20. A few honorary titles, a few gifts, and all of a sudden he won't hate you as much. Most of his hatred towards me comes from the fact that I'm of a different religion. So there you go. That's basically it. Are there any more systems? Well, not really. India is feudal, the entire thing. They have castles. Can you have a republic in India? Knock yourself out. Go ahead, try it. Can you have a theocracy in India? I think so. Never tried it. I think so. But they work exactly the same as Christian feudalism. I mean, India is feudal, period. That's all you need to know. There's nothing special about it in terms of government type. You have some game mechanics and stuff like that, but in terms of government type, that's about it. Is there anything else? I can see nomadic here. Yes. Nomadic is a type of government. Or is it? Here's the thing with nomads, and we're playing one right now, which is a sort of a great segue into the next one, right? Nomads are something like a tribal system, but not really. Okay? So, if we were to vassalize this guy here, does he have a negative opinion of me for wrong government type? Yes, he does, which means tribal and by the way, that wasn't a question, that was me demonstrating that it is. So the entire similarity thing is sort of, like, more or less genuinely ends there, right? Kind of. Here's the thing. They're sort of similar in that how you fix them is... well... they take different approaches to things, whereas with feudalism you would upgrade the holding, here you would burn it down and rid yourself of the problem that way. It's sort of like an inverse approach that they take here, but it's fine. It's fine. As long as it works for them, right? Thing is, Nomadic vassals cannot control baronies, cannot control cities, cannot control temples. What can they control? Sheep. What do you think? You think I'm joking? Look at it. It's right there. They can't control holdings. I mean, they can control their capital holding, but that's about it. Make no mistake, though, hordes in the current state of the game are some of the most overpowered pieces of shite you can possibly imagine. Their armies are ridiculously strong, their abilities to wage war are unprecedented, and yeah, they're just overall extremely strong in the hands of a competent player, despite the obvious disadvantage of their primary holding type being a flock of sheep. Thing is, they take everything with them, so you don't hold a castle, you burn it to the ground and take everything worthwhile with you, which is why they have population, manpower, and well, that's about it. That's about what distinguishes them, and they have their entire split clan thing. But again, I can do a video on how to play as nomads in the future. For now, how does it differentiate? Well, you'll notice that hordes are always emperors. So a horde, an independent horde, is always an emperor. Is there such a thing as a vassal horde? No. No. Due to the fact that a horde is always an empire rank title, an independent horde is always an empire rank title. What I mean by independent horde, within a horde you can have another horde, or another clan, but you can't do that within any other government system. So, hordes' good thing is you don't need to worry about them if you're not playing one. The only thing you need to worry about when it comes to government types when dealing with hordes is if you are playing a horde yourself, and you get a negative modifier for every government type that is not a horde, or a nomadic thing. Nomad, horde, same thing basically, right? It's, I mean, literally the same thing. The horde government type doesn't exist, it's officially called nomadic, but you get the point, right? So let's go back to the count over here, and the entire reason I opened up the console and did this. He hates me for pretty much the same reasons as the Pope does, but in his case, I believe this is a tribal ruler. Yes, it is. So it is a tribal ruler, and it is the wrong government type. How do we get rid of this? Well, we revoke... Is he? Tribal? Yes, he is. He only controls tribe. Yes. Okay. So, what we do is... we either settle as a tribe, if that's what you want, but if you want to continue playing as nomadic people, revoke all his stuff, and burn all his tribes to the ground. This is why tribes don't really like vassalizing people, and would prefer to sort of burn everything down to the ground. You can declare war to subjugate Hungary, in this case Hungary. You do need a lot of population and a lot of prestige to do it, but you can, and in that case the King of Hungary will become my vassal with the same negative modifier. However, if it's one big vassal you can manage him, if not you can just conquer everything bit by bit or establish him as a tributary, which case he will pay you taxes and not get the negative modifier. Whew, there we go. Nomads are a little bit complicated, and again, you need to worry about them only if you play as a nomad, which I will do a separate video on, so that was like a really quick little dash of information about that, but they are a little bit immaterial, and sort of, what I'm saying is leave this for later. In terms of everything else, there you go. One thing I forgot to mention though, and what sort of partially initiated this video. What happens if you hold a title such as this, a barony right here, and you create a vassal out of it? Why is that relevant? Well, holder is of wrong holding type. That sounds a little bit wrong. Holding type is wrong for the holder. As I said, nomads cannot control baronies. Christian feudal vassals cannot control churches. pretty much the same thing. This is what the holder is of the wrong type thing is all about. So what you do in that situation is you give the title in question to someone else. Either right-click and create a new vassal, or go to your courtiers and give it to one of them. Usually this is the better option because it ensures that the vassal created is of the same religion and culture as you are, as the character you're playing is. Although it would be a bit awkward if it knew what you, the person that bought the game, is. At any rate, stupid jokes aside, it is sometimes said that if you do this, or by some it is said that if you do this, you get rid of the wrong government type penalty. You don't. But you can only create vassals that are... You can only do the create vassal thing in a county where the primary holding is either owned by you or by someone else. Point being, you can't do this on a primary holding in a county. And mayors, such as this guy, barons, such as this guy, will never have that negative modifier. So it's not the fact that you are creating a new vassal that's doing this, it's the fact that the title of Baron, controller of one castle, will never have that negative modifier, as you can see. So I could have given this barony to my son, and if my son doesn't have any other holdings, the same would apply. However, if I gave this castle to, let's say, hypothetically, I attack and subjugate the King of Hungary. If I gave this castle to the King of Hungary, I would get the wrong modifier thing. I would get the wrong government type, because he's a feudal king, right? And this would be controlled by a feudal lord. Barons are not really in feudalism, because to be in feudalism you need to have a vassal under you. They're the lowest of the low. You can be a horde, you can be a tribe, you can be a theocracy. You're still above them one step, and they don't really get much say in the matter. So mayors and barons do not complain about wrong government type. Counts and dukes do. There you go. Again, they don't because it's not a main holding. It's not the capital of the county. It's not the most important holding in the county, such as this. There we go. Alright, that's about it. So, the reason I said that is I've heard people say that it's because you click this that it doesn't do that. No, it's not because of that. It's because of the type of holding you're creating him at. So this can be given to Bizel Galazid, or it could be given to Igor from the northern provinces of Siberia. It doesn't matter. It's the type of holding that he holds that's the key. If he were a count, which I think I can make him just for... I know I can't because this doesn't... Actually, can I? No. No, I can't. Again, because there is no holding here. If I were to make it into a temple, I could give it to him. Or if this were a castle, I could give it to him. And at that point, he would become a count. And then he would have the negative modifier towards me. There we go. Was that difficult to follow? I hope not. I don't know. I tried to explain everything in detail and repeat it a few times and make it somewhat understandable. It's a little bit of a convoluted system, and the game doesn't explain it all too well in particular situations. But I think that I've pretty much told you everything you need to know about government types and how to deal with them. So, if you have any questions, or didn't understand anything in the video, or think I made a mistake somewhere, or anything along those lines, please don't hesitate to contact me down in the comments below, and I will try and clarify things, or explain things, or fix things as we go along. Thank you very much for watching the video, ladies and gentlemen. Please remember to like and subscribe down below if you enjoyed, and in order to stay tuned with the rest of the content that I produce on this channel and support me. It helps a ton, believe me. But until next video, thank you very much once again. Also, feel free to recommend topics for CK2 tutorials in the future if you want anything specific to see and don't understand. I will take requests at this point due to the nature of this content, and I'll be honest, and the sort of more or less the size of my channel as well. But yeah, there we go. That's about it. I know, actually, before we just end off, here's an example. Baron, wrong government type. So, that was right there. Alright, there we go. That's it. Thank you so much for the third time. I'll see you next time. Take care, have fun, enjoy CK2. Bye-bye.